Welcome to WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. You're listening to After the Whistle, Loyola's premier sports talk radio show, airing every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Welcome into another Monday edition of the show. I am your host today, Jeffrey Bazzi, alongside my co-host, Jimmy Cody. Jimmy, how are you doing today?
I am good. How about yourself, Jeffrey?
I'm pretty good. We had a wild slate of NFL games yesterday. We're going to dive into those, and it is the last day of classes. So happy last day of classes to everyone out there. Finally getting towards the end, which feels good. I feel like everyone's kind of checked out. So just got to get through finals, and then we'll enjoy the nice long break. But for now, we're going to talk about some football here for the next hour or so. And we have a lot to get into, Jimmy. So why don't we kick things off in Buffalo?
Yeah, let's kick things off in Buffalo, where the Bills won 20-12 over the Mike White-led Jets. Jets fall to 7-6 now. Buffalo is, I thought they went through this phase where I was a little concerned about them, but now looking at it, they are the top of the AFC, and they actually have the home field right now. So that's good for them because they have that tiebreaker over the Chiefs. And listen, as much as you can say that Buffalo hasn't looked great, they're beating good teams. The Jets aren't a bad team at all, and they got the win in a game that they needed. And they have 10 wins, so that's something to be proud of as well. And the Dolphins lost, and we'll see what the Patriots do tonight, but they've kind of built themselves a little bit of a lead, the Bills, and I think they put themselves in a good spot, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree when you said that they went through a little bit of a rough patch in the middle of that season, but you can say what you want. They still found a way to win these games. I'm not saying they've had a lot
It wasn't pretty, though, yes.
I was going to say, they haven't had a lot of complete games this year. I think the most recent game where they had a quote-unquote complete game was that win in Foxborough. You felt like top to bottom, they played really well throughout the majority of that game. But all of these other games, when they've beaten Cleveland and Detroit and yesterday the Jets, I feel like they haven't really looked like the complete team that they really are. But yeah, they found a way to get it done, and it was a big win for them. And they avenged their first game of the season to the Jets, where they lost at MetLife Stadium. So definitely good to get some payback there and get a big divisional win, considering that the Dolphins are right behind them. We'll get into the Dolphins later in the show. But yeah, I thought they kind of just coasted through. And I remember on Friday, Jimmy, when we had our friend Sean Hemback on the show, who's a big Jets fan, and he was concerned about the defense, I believe. And the defense did do its job. And we were both, I think, more concerned with the offense. And I think we both were right. The offense, the offense only put up 12 points, and 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be enough to win in the NFL. And I would say Mike White had a decent game, but he also did get injured, unfortunately. He took a crazy hit from one of the Bills' defensive players. Not sure who it was, but
yeah, Mike White
was scary.
Mike White was extremely banged up yesterday. I'll try and find everything, to be completely honest with you, that happened to him, because I know it was a lot. Like, he went to the hospital after the game.
Right, like the phrase that he was literally under fire, under attack, like couldn't be more true. Unfortunately, though, because he took a lot of hits, and hopefully his health is okay.
Yeah, so here's what happened with Mike White yesterday. Left the game in the second quarter after getting hit in the ribs. He came back in 2 plays later, and then he got hit in the ribs again in the third quarter and left the game a second time to go get x-rays. And then he came back at the start of the fourth quarter, finished the game, got them almost in a chance to tie because they were down 8. It was a 1-possession game, and they were trying to work a drive. And then once the game went final, he went in an ambulance to the hospital. So
scary stuff.
We'll have to see. I mean, if he was able to play then, I assume that he will be able to play in the future. But at the same time, I mean, you have to question what do they do if Mike White can't be the quarterback? That's like a problem they have to worry about in the back of their head, because Flacco did come in and wasn't great, obviously. I just don't understand why Zach isn't the second quarterback.
Yeah, I thought that he was going to come in when Mike White got hurt. I was a little confused there.
The talent discrepancy between Flacco and Wilson is. How about let's not even say talent. That's the wrong word. The ability difference between Zach and Flacco is a lot.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, so Zach should probably be the 2.
Right. And the problem with the Jets QB situation is obviously Zach Wilson has not lived up to what everyone thought he could be, just being the number 2 pick. He's looked really bad in certain games, a la that second Patriots game. Actually, the first one too, but the second one I felt like was kind of any Patriots game. Yeah, they were both just the icing on the cake for Wilson's bad play. But it's just tricky when you're in a playoff stretch where you're trying to get in the playoffs and you don't really have a clear-cut QB1. I think that's a problem. And I feel like for the rest of the
No, it's a
year,
huge problem because it's like, listen, I think the players like Mike White, from what it seems, especially like Garrett Wilson, the other guys who have talked on the team, it seems like they really rally around Mike White and they like him a lot. So I would imagine, especially too, like after this, like he's definitely won his teammates over with the effort that he shows. Like there's no doubt he does not want to let this opportunity slip away, and he's not going to let anything happen to this because he must think that he deserves to be here, and he's probably their best option out of the three.
oh, I agree 100%. And the thing is, moving forward, like I said, when you're in a playoff stretch where you're trying to win enough games again, it's just hard without a clear-cut QB1 option. You kind of have to keep, I don't know, shuffling the dice a little bit because they want White to be the starter, but they also know that Wilson's sitting there. And if there's one or two hiccups from Mike White, they probably will go back to Wilson. It's just a tough situation. It reminds me kind of that Fitzpatrick Tua situation. It's a little different than that. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but there's a little bit of shades there, I think, except
Because
they
they're in the
can't.
middle of a playoff battle.
Right. And I think the difference with Fitzpatrick and Tua was that they kind of just flip flopped. It wasn't more so they didn't really favor one or the other. I think it was more of a situational thing. But I feel like here they clearly like Mike White more. And they had a reason to bench Zach Wilson. I mean, Robert Saleh clearly benched him for his poor play. And I think, unfortunately, rightfully so for Zach Wilson, that was the case. But I think they have to try to roll with Mike White as long as he's healthy, because hopefully his health's okay. But they're still at 7-6. I mean, they're not out of this thing. And the thing was, we talk about the offense for the Jets. The defense did its job because I'm looking here at the box score. The three guys that you would probably worry about on Buffalo that are not named Josh Allen would be Dawson Knox, Stephon Diggs, and Gabe Davis. And the Jets D really held them in check. I mean, I'm looking here. Dawson Knox actually led the three in receiving yards, and he only had 41.
That's a lot because Dawson Knox has not been the same at all this year.
And he, I believe, had no catches for no yards in their previous game in Foxborough.
Yeah, he has not been effective.
And Stephon Diggs only caught the ball 3 times. Same with Gabe Davis. And Buffalo on the ground wasn't terrible, but it's not like they ran all over the field.
They're not good enough.
It's just a shame for the Jets because the defense did give the offense a chance to stay in this game, and they were in the game, but right, but the offense just didn't get it done.
So really quickly, I want to talk about the Jets and what they have going forward because we kind of laid it out for Buffalo. Like they're at the 1 seed, they're 10-3. Just so we can just finish out the Buffalo talk here. Their next game is against the Dolphins on Saturday night in Buffalo. They are 7.5-point favorites at home.
Yeah, that's big.
That is. Well, I heard it also might snow 7 inches.
Ooh.
If that happens to the Dolphins, that game would be insane because either of those teams run the ball.
Right.
They don't run the ball either really that great.
I would think Josh Allen would probably run more often.
I was gonna say I would think Josh Allen would become like the guy. Like he would actually bring down Josh Allen in the snow. Oof, that probably would be really
good luck with that.
But anyway, then they play the Bears, which is probably a game for the Bills. And then they have a big game against the Bengals actually on Monday Night Football the 2nd. January 2nd. That's a good game because that actually
really good game.
That could determine the 1 seed.
It could,
because the Bengals have it over the Chiefs, and if they beat the Bills and they also win their own division, have a better record, they are the 1 seed.
Right? Yeah, they got to worry about the Ravens too in their division. But yeah,
the Ravens are going through a lot right now, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Right. If the Chiefs fall their way, they could sneak up to the 1 seed. The Bengals,
yeah, they definitely could. And then they close it out with the Patriots in Week 18, but. As for the Jets, I want to talk about the emergence of Garrett Wilson because I think he's been really great. And we haven't gotten a chance to mention him, but great pick because it's looking like he is really starting to come out and have this kind of like, coming out party. Like he's doing a great job. He's been leading this team in receiving, and he really is the only receiving threat on this team. If they can just get him another receiver, I think it would take their offense to a better place. If you want me to be honest with you, you know who he reminds me of last season, and this might be controversial because maybe he's not putting up the numbers this guy did, but he reminds me a lot of Devontae Smith last year and Jalen Waddle, where he just comes in right away and has this huge threat.
Yeah, a little bit. I would say the same thing.
He's
and
a lot more similar player than Devontae, though.
I think it's good for the Jets that they kind of have a guy that's emerging because they've invested a lot of draft picks in the wide receivers recently with Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims, and they still have Braxton Berrios. He's not really much of a receiving threat. He's more of a special teams kind of utility guy, but
certainly not a receiving threat when the game's on the line in Minnesota.
That's
can't get to the ball.
That's true too. Yeah, but Wilson, I think, is kind of the guy that's emerges their number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going forward for the Jets, they play the Lions next week at home. That is going to be a really tough game. Even, by the way, pick them for the spread that game. And then they play the Jaguars on a Thursday night, so they'll have a short week after that. And then they have the Seahawks on the road and the Dolphins on the road. Jets are going to find out a lot about themselves. They have got to beat the Lions. If they lose that game, that's tough. But listen, that's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, that's a really even game.
And the Jaguars, too. Everybody makes fun of them. They are only 2 games out.
Right, they're still in the mix in the
They
South.
just had a nice win over Tennessee, which we can talk about now because I was pretty impressed, honestly, with the way that the Jaguars played. Trevor Lawrence has looked good these last couple of weeks. Obviously, he did not play good against Detroit. That was a dumpster fire. But I'm talking about the Ravens game and now this game. I mean, this is really what you want. 3 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I feel like every time he plays well, he throws for 300 plus passing yards and 3 touchdowns, and he did it again yesterday.
Yeah, the problem for the Titans was the 3 first half turnovers. It's just unacceptable. Yeah, if you're going to be competitive, how can you have 3 turnovers? It also doesn't help that Ryan Tannehill is part of the reason for that, and Derrick Henry was part of the reason for that. Those are 2 of the guys that they kind of need to count on offense. And at the end of the day, turnovers cost you games.
And I would say the other thing is, if I saw this right on TV, Derrick Henry only had 2 yards in the second half. Is that right?
I did not know that. Wow.
I think I saw that on Red Zone. I think Scott Hansen announced it because I'm seeing here that he rushed for 121. And I didn't really see much of this game just because I was watching some other games. But
well, yeah, it's Jaguars Titans. It wasn't.
He was shut down, right? But you're right. This is a big win for the Jags, and no one really viewed them coming into the year as a team that could probably make the playoffs. But they're only 2 back of the Titans, and they actually play them again later in the season, I believe, in Jacksonville. So things are falling good for the Jags because I believe they have another game against the Texans. You'd think they could probably win that game, even though they did lose to them earlier in the year. But I don't know if they can run the table a little bit. Maybe get to 8-9, 9-8. Maybe that'll be enough. Who knows? The way Tennessee's playing. But Tennessee, I think, is still the better team. But I don't know. The way they're playing right now, it doesn't really inflict a lot of confidence.
Well, the tough part for the Jaguars is that they have a tough remaining schedule, particularly with these next 2 games.
Right.
Really, 3 of their 4 games that are difficult because they're playing the Cowboys. That's going to be tough. It's a tough game. There's no other way to say it. Even though the Jaguars are home, Cowboys are a good team.
And even though the Cowboys did not look good yesterday, they're still good.
Yeah, we know that they're a good team. We've seen what they did to a team like Minnesota. And listen, we know what they can do. And then the Jets, too. That's going to be a really tough game on the road on a short week, especially after you play the Cowboys. Those are tough games back to back. So we'll really see again what a team like this is made of. So they have an outside chance, and then they close with the Texans and the Titans once again. So they'll need to win those games, and then probably need the Titans to lose some too. But listen, I'll tell you right now, if you're in the AFC, you want to play the Titans because that team is not really that great.
So
the rest of those teams have to be thinking, please let us play the Titans. Please let us play the Titans. If you want me to be honest with you, I think whoever wins or loses the AFC North will probably get that top wild card spot. You might be better off going on the road to Tennessee than you would be if you're one of the other.
Than hosting and playing like Miami or LA or New England.
Would you rather play the Titans or would you rather play the Dolphins?
Oh, the Titans. 100%.
Would you, if you are the Bengals, would you rather play the Titans who you beat last year and you beat a couple weeks ago and you shut down Derrick Henry? Or would you rather play a team like the Jets who's got a really good defense?
Probably the Titans.
Exactly, right? Like,
yeah, I think the only thing that would be against that would be the home field aspect to it, but
I don't know. The Titans just got destroyed at home here.
That's definitely a valid point. And the other point that I was going to bring up is you bring up a great point about how you might want to drop your seeding so that you play an inferior team like the Titans. I feel like whoever gets the number 5 seeds in both conferences, I think this is applicable to the NFC as well.
Oh my God. Yeah. Great
because the NFC South winner is more likely than not going to be the number 4 seed. And then that 5 seed will be on the road against the NFC South winner. So if it's the Bucks or the Falcons or the Panthers or the Saints, one of those teams is hosting a playoff game, and you look at the 5 seed, it's probably more than likely going to be the loser of the NFC East. So Eagles or Cowboys or Giants, probably the Eagles or the Cowboys. So one of those teams will be on the road. We'll see. I still think the Cowboys are in the mix, but
it's only,
I think it's 2 games with the one head-to-head still left.
Yeah,
but
okay. So which could be one, really.
It could be
one game of wiggle room, right?
Right.
You're saying? All right, so it's a lot closer than it seems. But let's move on to another team that I want to talk about. So the Bengals, this is like a sleeping giant. Like I said, remember we had that talk about when they run the ball. Jeff, they have been running the ball so well lately. I mean, their offensive line had like a switch, and they're like this so much better offense now. They're not putting them as much points, but they finally have learned to just control the clock in addition to having all these great players. Like, you're not seeing Burrow just go for the deep pass every time. Like, he's checking to runs. Their offensive line is finally coming together. I mean, it looked horrible at the beginning of the season. It was awful. I mean, they should have easily beaten some teams that they lost to, I thought, especially that Steelers loss, looking back on it. That was a rough one. But now, if you look at them, I mean, this is a team that could win the Super Bowl, I think, no question.
Oh, 100%. I think if they get that division win and they find a way to win the North, I think that would be good too. But the way they're playing right now, it's great. They're really mixing and matching the run and the pass. But I was also more impressed with the defense too, because
Defense has stepped up huge.
Deshaun Watson came into town yesterday, and I know it's only a second game back, so you probably think he might be a little rusty still, but he did look not too bad. I mean, he threw for 276. He's still trying to get his legs under him a little bit, but I think this is all about the offense, like you said.
One key point I want to make about the defense for Cincinnati, how about the great job they did stopping the run? Nick Chubb only had 34
Right.
yards. I think that was the key of this game.
Yeah, Chubb didn't really do much, and Hunt basically did nothing with the 6 yards.
Limited. They were limited by this defense.
Yeah, the
And
only guy that really did damage was Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, and it wasn't like Nick Chubb didn't get the ball. He got 14 carries and got 34 yards. That's kind of rough day.
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on to those Cowboys, right?
What a game this was.
Yeah, this was actually a pretty good. If you were watching Red Zone, like you saw this game and you were kind of like, what the heck is going on? But let's take it to the end of the game because the Texans get that interception deep in Cowboys territory. And they look like they're just setting up for it because it's 23-20. They just need to essentially get the ball in the end zone and they give themselves a pretty good chance of locking up the game. And in the most Texans way possible, they go for it on fourth because I get it. It's like the Cowboys end up scoring a touchdown anyway, so it didn't really matter because there was so much time left. And you got to go for the touchdown there. I do agree, especially when you have one win. But God, what the heck is Jeff Driscoll doing? He ran the wrong way on the biggest play of the game. Come on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was him just screwing it up or
no. They tried to run the
Lovey
option.
Smith's play call. I don't really know what it was.
Horrible, actually, because it was who runs the option on 4th and goal. I don't, especially with Jeff Driscoll, like played for the Broncos. I don't remember seeing like this great athletic guy. I just literally remember just seeing like the most mediocre quarterback literally ever. But again, point is, it was just such a dumb play call.
Yeah, and I thought the Texans for a while had this game just in their control. I thought from the get-go they were kind of just shocking the world in every single facet. I thought they got off to a really fast start. I believe they were up 10-7 at the end of the first quarter, and then they traded some scores with the Cowboys, but they were still winning. I mean, they were up 23-17, and it's just tough because I actually don't fault them for going for it on 4th and goal, trying to get the touchdown because they have one win. Their season's kind of a lost cause. And if they get that touchdown, it's kind of a kill shot and they kind of win the game more likely than not, barring some miracle. But I guess the only other argument would be if you kick the 3, you go up 26-20,
but
you still force Dallas to get a touchdown. And then the extra point obviously would give the Cowboys the lead. But
if you get the touchdown there, especially because you're so close,
it's over.
Yeah.
But I don't really fault them for going for it.
I would have went for it.
And I'm a big advocate for kicking field goals when you're down in the red zone. I'm not like a huge go for it on 4th down guy, unless it's a certain situation where it's kind of like you're feeling it out. But I do agree that I think it was the right call to go for it there. It's just the way that play ended up, it was just a disaster.
Yeah, that was really, really, really.
I thought honestly that they should have put the ball through the air because I'm not sure what yard line they were on, but I don't know. They ran it, I think, on the previous play and they got stuffed.
They lost yards on the previous play.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure what yard line they were on. I'm not sure if it was the 1, but I think it might have been the 3.
It was 3.
Yeah, that's kind of an in-between area. Because if you're probably on the 5 or more,
what they should have did when they were on the 1 was probably QB sneak.
Right. And that was the 3rd and goal play. They had 3rd and goal on the 1.
QB sneak is such an underrated play, especially if you're ahead of the sticks, right? Like if it's 2nd down or it's 3rd down, like you have one more play.
All he needs is that little push. And
I love what these
or if you're the QB, you just sneak in there between the offensive
coordinators now who have like sent tight ends. Like we see this all the time with the Ravens. So you put like Pat Ricard in motion and have him push the pile. That's a great way to do it. Yeah, that's genius. That's a great way. Use what you have to your advantage. And I don't know, when you're so close like that, I just feel like this is another situation where I've seen just goal line play calling. That just has not been good. Talked about it with the Jets a few weeks ago, and it was the same true here.
But all in
Yeah.
all, this was a big win for the Cowboys because they did need this win. This is something that did not want to slip up. You know?
That last drive for the Cowboys, they got it done. Obviously, they needed to do, or they did what they needed to do. But I think the story was also they lost an offensive lineman, and former Eagle Jason Peters actually wasn't the first guy off the bench for them, but he was actually the second guy off the bench because I forget what the other guy's name was, but they took him out. But this is all at the Tyron Smith spot because Tyron Smith is out for the Cowboys and he's been out, but he's looking to return soon, which is not good news for your Eagles, of course. But still, at the end of the day, the Cowboys are happy they get the win. And listen, the Cowboys are now sitting pretty. I mean, they're now, 10-3. Yeah, they're 10-3. Okay, so
they're right there.
another
Yeah.
successful season. So
Right. Yeah. And with
can't-
4 games left, they still have a chance for the 1 seed.
That is true. That is true. Can't ask for much more. All right, so now let's talk about Vikings Lions here. We were talking about this game a little bit on Friday, and we had Colin Nosek on, and he was obviously all over the Vikings. I wasn't 100% sure what I thought about this game because obviously you and I both said, hey, both offenses are really good, but we didn't know really what stood with the defenses. And Detroit was able to take advantage of just a piss poor defense in Minnesota.
Right. And I believe this is the 5th or 6th week in a row where the Vikings defense has given up over 400 yards. And that's disgraceful, especially for a team that's 10-3. You would think they'd be
they're not a good 10-3
near
team.
the top of the league, but yeah, I think they're becoming more of a mirage as the season goes along. And I didn't really believe it until the last few weeks when they didn't really play too well defensively against New England. And then the Cowboys game was the outlier. But yeah, this is another example of the defense just not holding up its end. And the offense, I thought, held up their end. But I mean, Kirk Cousins threw for 425. So they gave themselves a chance.
Well, Dalvin's fumble was the problem.
Right. And he didn't really play well to begin with either.
He was awful yesterday. Dalvin's fumble was a disaster. I mean, that was, I thought, really kind of a turning point in the game because the Lions already had a lead and that just kind of, helped them.
And you look at the Minnesota receiving stats. I mean, Justin Jefferson. I mean, come on. He's just ridiculous.
Be expected, though, against this defense. It's not like the Lions are a good defense either.
But whenever you see 11 for 223, I mean, that's just insane. I think we're just getting so used to it now because he's by far a top 2 receiver. He could be the best receiver in the NFL.
It's not just him though. They have other really good threats out out wide. I mean, TJ Hawkinson's not bad.
Former Lion, ironically.
Former Lion. And they also have Adam Thielen too, who had a touchdown catch. I mean, that's a solid receiving core there.
It's just a shame because
Jalen Reagor had 1 target, that's big for him.
Did you actually see what he said pregame? He's guaranteed the win. Apparently,
Jalen Reagor did.
Yeah, he said, "I guarantee that we're going to win today," because some reporter asked him a question, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to win, no doubt. I got no doubts in my mind." And then he had 1 target and no catches, and they lost.
Jalen Reagor went out and predicted.
I'll send you the tweet.
Jalen Reagor didn't even know if he was going to step on the field yesterday. What is he out there guaranteeing a win for?
I think he said 6 receptions the whole year.
I would have cut him after that. I actually would have cut
The only reason I brought it up is because someone sent it to me this morning. So,
well, what's actually even worse?
I'll have to send it to you.
I'm happy that you said this. Kirk Cousins called this a hat and T-shirt game because they would have won the division if they won this game,
and they did not.
And they did not. They lost like typical Vikings fashion. And why do you even care? Why do you even need to make a statement about it? The season goes
go out and try to win.
Yeah, it goes beyond. I don't see the Eagles excited, oh, we might win the division. The Chiefs yesterday, they didn't lock up the division, but now I think they need 1 more win.
Right. I think they're up 3 with 4 to play.
Yeah, so they need 1 win or a Chargers loss.
Yes.
And they're literally just I don't see them excited. I hope the Chargers lose tonight so we can get our T-shirt. You think Mahomes cares about that? No, that's why Kirk Cousins is a loser who never wins anything. Who cares about your T-shirt and hat?
I guess in his defense, right.
Who cares? But nobody's
you shouldn't be saying that.
We want to be division champs this year. No, everybody's playing for the Super Bowl. Nobody cares, especially when you're. No offense, nobody else in that division is really that great. Nobody nearly has the record that they do, and hypothetically, they're running away with it.
Right, they're going to be fine. I mean, they have a lot of ground. They're up 4 on Detroit, who is the second place team.
The Colts this week. The Colts and the Giants are their next 2 games.
Right, both on Saturdays actually, which is a weird little thing to point out. But
the NFL is playing on Saturday, some of the games on the 24th, which is Christmas Eve.
Right.
But then some lucky teams get to play on Christmas Day.
Like your team.
Others too.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so just for the Vikings, just I don't know.
Well, it's a shame that we point out how great the offense has been for the majority of the year. It's just the defense. It's just so bad. And you wonder when it's going to turn around or if it's going to turn around. And I don't know if it's going to turn around. They could have one or two games here and there where, I don't know, everyone just kind of plays crazy good. Just they don't have the personnel they used to. Because I remember these Vikings defenses from the late 2010s, especially when they made that NFC Championship run in the 2017 season. That defense was elite. And they're just so far from that defense, I guess, now. And it's just nowhere near what it used to be. And that's the kind of defense they need. But even that, you still would like to have somewhat of an average defense, and they just don't have it. But for Detroit, I think this is all about them. They have quietly asserted themselves right into the thick of that NFC wildcard race. And they're right up there with teams like the Giants and the Commanders and the Seahawks, who are kind of vying for those last few spots.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And let's move on to some of those teams in the wild card. I want to talk about your Eagles here really quickly. So 48-22 victory over the Giants. Why don't you kind of take me through what you saw out there? Because obviously you're an Eagles fan. Who else knows a team better than you?
I was actually shocked that it was a blowout. I thought this game was going to be kind of one in the trenches, a classic NFC slow scoring game where maybe 20 points is enough to win, but I don't know. The offense just once again looked really good. I thought Miles Sanders is probably the key player on offense for the Eagles, and I'm really glad that they kind of went back to the run. I'm not saying they went back to the run, but I feel like they kind of made it their focal point on offense. And Hurts had a nice day on the ground as well. He ran for 77 yards and 7 carries. So that math is really nice. 11 yards a carry. He's basically having a first down every time he gets the ball on the ground, but thought he did a pretty decent job through the air. I wouldn't say it was like a great day through the air, but they also didn't have to throw it a lot because they had a lead. So you'd think, oh, let's just keep running the ball and burning the clock. But you look at the Giants, I don't know. Daniel Jones was okay. I just feel like he didn't do enough. And I think it really hurt them that Saquon Barkley was just not 100%. Because if he's 100%, they're giving him the ball probably 20, 25, 30 times a game. And he only got the ball 9 times yesterday. And it's unfortunate because I think he's kind of the catalyst that kind of makes the whole thing go for the Giants on offense. And I felt like the defense just had one of those rough games where they didn't really seem to get much going for them. And now they're at 7-5-1, and they're still in a playoff spot, actually, because lucky for them, Seattle did lose. So I think if they can right the ship, and they really have to because they play the Commanders next week, they really have to find a way to win that game. But I still feel like their season's not done yet. They just have to find a way to kind of get back to what they were doing earlier in the year. But it definitely was a little discouraging the way they look. But I think they might be okay moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just were saying there about Abazi. I mean, honestly, the one thing that I'll say is the Giants have to be better next week when they play the Commanders, because if they play anything like that, they just have no chance. It's just that simple. The next week game is ultimately the game that matters for them, and they're going to need to win that game. All right, so let's move on here to our local team in Baltimore. We're also going to welcome in a caller, our good friend Maddie Kane. Maddie, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. So, all right, let's talk about the Ravens game here. I know you obviously want to get to the Patriots game, and we want to talk about that too, but we're still going through all the games here. So obviously the Ravens played the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. I want to hear what your thoughts were on Mitch Trubisky and his 3 interceptions, because he was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, he was pretty horrible. So going into the game, I was kind of like you. I thought the Steelers could come away with it. But once Trubisky came in, I just kind of knew it was over for them, especially after he started throwing those horrible interceptions.
Yeah, so I think 2 of them came in the red zone, which really hurts because those could have been points, especially since it was such a close game. But I agree with you. I mean, one of the things they said on the broadcast yesterday, and Jeff, I didn't even know this, but they said that when Kenny Pickett had been the quarterback, they've had some of the lowest turnover games. Like, they've had the lowest amount of turnovers, which I think is crazy. I mentioned that on Friday, how they haven't had turnovers in a while. And then I went and actually, like, when they said it on the stat, I was like, really, how much? Well, nobody on the team is turning the ball over. And it's amazing. When Trubisky came in, he just set them back so much with those turnovers. And you know what the worst part was, Maddie, too? They weren't even like close throws at all. Some of them were not even open. Yeah, they were terrible. And honestly, if Kenny Pickett can't play, the Steelers are definitely screwed, because Mitch Trubisky just isn't good. And the thought of them giving him a contract in the offseason looks kind of crazy now, wouldn't you say, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a big loss for the Steelers that Pickett went down because, like you said, you would think that they'd be a team that might average a lot of turnovers just because Pickett kind of was sloppy with the ball in his first few starts. I remember that game in Buffalo. He just didn't really look that great because number one, he's a rookie, but it's hard to play in a place like that. But other than that, I thought he's kind of righted the ship a little bit and he's kind of found himself. And I feel like it's just a big loss for them, especially because they kind of had to get this game to stay in that wild card race. But now 5-8, I'm not saying they're completely out of it, but I
They're
don't
gonna need a
know.
lot of help.
Yeah, their chances are looking a little dry. And first of all, Maddie, welcome to the show once again. It's glad to have you on. You're always a great guest. So thank you for joining once again. But I was actually going to stay on this topic of QBs, but flip it to the Ravens because a Ravens QB actually went down with an injury yesterday, and that was Tyler Huntley, who was actually filling in for Lamar Jackson because he was injured in their game last week against the Broncos. So he was on the shelf this week, and Tyler Huntley came in and he was all right, but he did go down with an injury. So now with the Ravens, because they're kind of a team on the other side of the spectrum than the Steelers, because they're 9-4 and they're still on top of the AFC North. Because we talk about the Bengals so much, the Ravens are actually still in first place just because of that tiebreaker from Week 5 early in the year. But Maddie, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Ravens QB situation because I don't know what the extent is of the Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley injury, but if they have to go to a third stringer, like
Anthony Brown,
what do
baby.
you do? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Forward to lose a game and still be in the picture. And I heard that if he's not back this week, it should be the week after. So as long as he comes back and plays like his, week 1 through 4 self, where he runs the ball and everything like that, I think they'll be good. I was also wanting to bring up how many third and fourth string quarterbacks we've had this season. So the Patriots had Daffy for a few games now. Well, the Ravens are on theirs. Russell Wilson's now hurt there with Purdy in San Francisco. So I just feel like it's been a
Baker Mayfield,
exactly
Sam Darnold.
So many injuries to quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, there definitely is a lot of injuries to quarterbacks this year. You're not wrong about that. We saw Tua get hurt earlier this season.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been injuries everywhere. It's part of the league. Honestly, too, it's honestly like you look at some teams, especially when you get to the playoffs, and it's like who is most healthy almost always has like the best chance just because health is so underrated, especially in football. But I actually like that you brought up Brock Purdy's situation because this kid is balling right now. And we got to talk about that. I mean, a 35-7 win yesterday over TB12. I mean, Brock Purdy has been alive less seasons than Tom Brady has been in the NFL. That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did so good. I mean, I think he obviously has a better offensive line than Tom Brady, which helps him, especially with McCaffrey. I think he scored 2 touchdowns yesterday, so that was helpful. But
better coaching too.
Yes, way better coaching. Yeah, it was just an insane first start for him.
Yeah, a lot of things went really well for Brock Purdy, but he also hurt his oblique. He's expected to be okay for Thursday when they face off against Seattle. But I can't help but look at this game, and I think of the story here as the Bucs. I mean, I would have never expected this if you told me Brady was coming back. I mean, who would think that he was coming back for this? I mean, they're 6-7. They can't score points. They can't stop Brock Purdy, and they're a dumpster fire. I mean, they really don't deserve to be in the playoffs. But the problem is neither of the other teams in their division too.
And one of them's getting in.
Yeah, and listen, it's more than likely going to be the Panthers or the Bucs right now, just based off of the record situation. It could also still be the Falcons or the Saints. They still technically have chances. But I mean, really, if it's anybody but the Bucs, I mean, does that even scare anybody in the NFC? At least the Bucs have Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time, and at least is a little bit scary. But the rest of those teams just don't really look that talented and would be a non-factor, I think, in the playoffs.
I don't think they'd scare anyone, but I kind of hope the Panthers somehow make it in because ever since they fired their head coach and now I can't remember his name, but he took over.
Steve Wilks.
Steve Wilks, and then Sam Darnold too at quarterback. Yeah.
So I kind of hope they keep the streak up and get into the playoffs, at least for a wild card or into the direct playoffs.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about that game because it was 30-24, and the Seahawks have been playing pretty good this season. They've definitely, I would say, surpassed kind of the expectations that were had for them, especially after the Russell Wilson trade. I don't really think anybody expected that much out of them, and they were leading the division for most of the season, but now they're in the hunt. And Carolina just comes in and puts up 30 points here. And this was a Carolina offense that's been pretty bad. They traded away Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers. Robbie Anderson is now a Cardinal. He was their best receiver outside of DJ Moore. And then they also got rid of Baker Mayfield, who was the starter week 1. And they're on what is technically their third string quarterback in Sam Darnold. But at the end of the day, I'm not the biggest Sam Darnold fan, but he is kind of playing like respectable. And the Carolina offense is doing what it needs to do, especially when it comes to running the ball.
Yeah, they got a dynamic duo in Chuba Hubbard and Donta Foreman. I think those are the two guys that they should just keep giving the ball to. And I thought Darnold, I guess, made enough plays in the air. I didn't think he made a lot of plays, but he made enough where it didn't really hurt the team. Because on the other side, Geno Smith was a little sloppy because he had 2 interceptions, which is uncharacteristic of him. And his plays kind of been sliding like a little bit. I don't think it's been
definitely been sliding.
I don't think it's been too noticeable just because I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it. But
the defense hasn't been as good either.
Right. They were 7-3, right? Or 7-4, and now they're 7-6. And this is a must win for them on Thursday because they host San Francisco. So this is a game that they have to win if they want to have a chance at still winning the NFC West. And they could still probably get in the wild card, but they're really going to have to win this game because they're coming off of a short week and they're going to have to use that home crowd. But I was actually going to bring something up from the game we just talked about in the Buccaneers 49ers game. The Deebo Samuel injury was a big injury. I felt like that we should deserve to talk about because
we forgot to mention that.
While the 49ers did win in blowout fashion, I think it did come at a little bit of a cost with that injury because
no doubt
he's the one guy on offense. I mean, he can really be a game wrecker. So can Kittle, but I feel like Samuel has been more of a game wrecker, especially recently in the last year or so.
I feel like when they got that McCaffrey trade, you looked at that team and you're like, Deebo Samuel and McCaffrey, like those are the guys that could really do some major damage. And now you lose one of them. And listen, when you don't have an elite receiver like that, you're going to be hurting on offense no matter what. That's just the truth. And especially when you're on your third string quarterback, it doesn't make it any easier for him either. So they're going to have to find a way for somebody to step up, and they're going to have to find a way to make this thing happen if they are going to make a deep run in the playoffs. Somebody's going to have to step up for them. It's going to probably have to be Ayuk. It's going to probably have to be Kittle because those are the guys. Somebody's going to have to catch the ball. Someone's going to have to make the big plays happen. And I think especially Ayuk is going to have to be that guy because it doesn't seem like Kittle is having quite the same effect that he's had in years past. I mean, I could be wrong, but would you guys say you agree with that?
Yes, 100%.
All right, so yeah, he did. He definitely was helping the 49ers offense get to the place they needed to. But for the 49ers, listen, they got to win this game over Seattle. They got to take care of business there. And then for them, it's just about winning the division, I think, because nobody else really scares me as far as playing them. Like, I think they can beat a lot of the teams in the wild card. And ultimately, I don't think they would ever face Dallas. So that's not something we have to worry about. Really quickly, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this to discuss the Dolphins, Chargers, and then tonight's Monday night game between the Cardinals and Patriots.
Welcome back to WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle with Jeffrey Bazzi and Jimmy Cody, and we're delighted to once again have our guest back on the show, Maddie Kane, who was on the show right before the break, but she has stayed on the line. We're going to talk some more football, and we have some exciting games to talk about that happened yesterday, and we have one to talk about that's happening tonight. So I think we're going to pick up our conversation with some Chiefs and Broncos talk because we had a really exciting game out in Denver yesterday, Jimmy.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it. I completely forgot, honestly. You know what it was? You know what it felt was the difference this week? I'm not mad because we put up 28 points. That's like a record for us. Like,
hip, hip,
who could have
hooray.
seen this coming, right? Obviously, the story here is Russell getting hurt for the Broncos. I mean, it really sucked because I thought this is the best that he's played literally the entire season, right?
And I'll say it right now, if he did not go down with that injury, I think the Broncos would have won this game.
The Broncos would have won too. I mean, the Chiefs did not look that good. It's like, this is a secondary.
They looked good early on, but Mahomes with 3 picks and the defense kind of just scuffling in the middle kind of opened the door for Denver to put up points, which they did. And it was unfortunate because Brett Rippon did not get it done, but he was kind of just thrown in there.
Well, I think the Mahomes thing is way less of a big deal. It's like you're not worried about Mahomes. Like the Broncos do have a good defense. Like they were going to do something, right? Like they did give up a decent amount of points, like 27, right?
Yeah.
It ended up only being 7 in the second half. You got to remember one with the Russell Wilson pick 6, so that's why it's 34. But the defense only gave up 27. So they only gave up 7 in the second half, and they did a good job.
They did kick it into gear.
Yeah, they kicked it into gear. They did what they were supposed to, and they had 3 picks. So whatever, Mahomes is going to go through his struggles. But I think the story here was the Broncos offense actually doing something, particularly Jerry Jeudy. 3 touchdowns? I mean, where has this been the entire career? It was nice to finally see us work the ball to him. I mean, he was open every single play. It's good to see him healthy, and it seems like he can actually do something, which is nice. But I also think the unfortunate part is Russell was finally getting into a groove and gets hurt, right? I mean, Maddie, you said that to me yesterday.
Yeah.
It was just such a shame.
He started running, he started acting, passing it at the right speed and everything turned around, and then of course he goes down trying to just move the ball for himself.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the running part because we saw a side of Russell that we have not seen, and I think all season. I mean, he was running all over the field. He was really productive in the run. He was taking advantage of what was in front of him. And I don't know if that's because of health, because I know he tore part of his hamstring earlier in the season, and he has been a little banged up. But the truth is, he just hasn't been playing that good. And he finally did. That was, I felt like, the story for me on my end. I mean, what did you think, Jeffrey? What would you say that you want to add here?
I don't know. I just felt like the offense from the get-go kind of, I don't know, found their rhythm. I just felt like the execution was better than what it normally has been. But I was just surprised that the defense kind of faltered in the beginning. But you are playing the Chiefs, so it's not like you're gonna, I don't know what the word is, but it's hard to contain them for the majority of the game.
Stop Mahomes. That's
Right.
the problem.
Yeah, it's hard to stop Patrick Mahomes. I think you found the words for me. But I was just encouraged that the Denver offense was finally coming to life. And I felt like they had to have a guy to step up. And Jerry Jeudy was clearly that guy, like you said. He just came out of nowhere. And I feel like he's capable of doing that.
So capable.
We just haven't seen it. And I know that I feel like earlier in the year, Cortland Sutton was kind of the number one. I felt like he was just producing like a number one. But Jeudy, I feel like, has more potential to be a number one.
Definitely. And Jeudy has been kind of taking that mantle recently. He's been a little banged up, but he has definitely shown, like, as much as this year has been a dumpster fire, I have been impressed with Jerry Jeudy in some parts. Like, he really could be a really good player if he's on the right team. Maddie, what would you like to add to the Broncos Chiefs conversation here?
Basically what you were saying about Jeudy, I agree with, and I think that if Russell comes back and keeps throwing to him, then he'll be a really productive wide receiver.
Certainly, I agree with that. The Broncos, hypothetically, right, if they did get Javonte Williams back next year, and he was the running back, and they obviously have that tight end Dulcich, who looks pretty productive for a rookie. If maybe they get a coach who can actually coach, they might not have that bad of an offense. Right now, they're currently working with, I wouldn't even call him an Uber driver as quarterback because I'm not sure or not as quarterback, an Uber driver as head coach, because I don't even know if he's capable of that. That's truly how stupid I think Nathaniel Hackett is. But at the end of the day, the season's washed, but it was good to see the team play hard, I think, especially in a game like this. Like, I was worried that we would just kind of come out and get shellacked, and it kind of did look that way at the beginning when it was 27-0. But at least they put up some fight, and Russell at least did something productive for this season. Hopefully he's okay, because that looked like it was a really nasty hit. I mean,
yeah, it did not look good. He kind of just like scared when he hit the ground.
And also he had that massive bump on the side of his head too.
Yeah, that was a disgusting image to look at.
Yeah, it did not look good at all. So really disappointing to see him get hurt, especially when he was playing so well. All right, so let's talk about the Sunday night game, Dolphins Chargers. Listen, I'm gonna be the first to say it. I really thought very highly of the Dolphins coming into this game, and this was just not at all what I expected. So, Maddie, I'll let you take the floor here for first. But what are your thoughts on this Dolphins Chargers game?
Well, unlike you, I thought the Chargers were going to win, but I did think it was going to be more of an offensive game where the Dolphins would score more points. I mean, Tua barely hit, like, I think around 150 yards, and 60 of that was from one pass to Tyreek Hill. So, I mean, he did not have a very good night at all. Whereas I feel like we're used to seeing him throw 300 yards, even more at home. So I don't know why he had such a bad offensive night. But on the other hand, Herbert did amazing offensively. He had upwards of 300 yards, bunch of touchdowns. I think he had a really. I was disappointed to it.
Yeah, I was really disappointed into it too. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Maddie. I think the story was Justin Herbert. I mean, he was outstanding as quarterback. That was probably the best game I've seen Herbert play all season.
It was great.
Yeah, so Jeff, what would you like to add about this Dolphins Chargers game?
Yeah, I'll just echo most of what Maddie just said. I think she's 100% right. This is all about Tua because I felt like coming in, this is kind of the showdown between Tua and Herbert because they were obviously drafted in the same class with back-to-back picks, and there was a lot of controversy as to, oh, should Tua go ahead of Herbert or should Herbert go ahead of Tua? And I'm not saying this game's going to answer that question, but I guess in the short term, because some people like to be like, oh, this game proves that Herbert deserves to be drafted over Tua. I think it's a valid argument to be made, but I mean, 10 for 28. I mean, really? 35% of your passes are being completed. And when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I mean, Tyreek Hill had a decent night, I thought. He had that very wacky touchdown off of the fumble recovery, but Jalen Waddle, for the most part, he was pretty non-existent. And they didn't run the ball terribly well. I mean, or not too bad, just because they had 92 yards. That's not terrible, but I do agree. This is all about Herbert. He was really slinging it around the field. And I thought Tua was going to do the same, but he just didn't. He just didn't show up. And this is a game that the Dolphins really needed to kind of stay with the Bills in that AFC East race and also stay in the race with the other wildcard teams. But now they dropped to 8-5. And I mean, they're still probably going to be a playoff team, I would think, unless they go on a losing streak for the rest of the year. But this is a game that they really could have had and they let it slip away.
Completely agree, Jeff. There was a game they could have had. You know what the problem is too about the Dolphins? They are such, and Maddie, you brought this up, but I'm just reconveying it. They are such a different team when they play at home and to on the road. Oh my God. It's especially true on their defense. Their defense is so much worse on the road. And I don't know. I'm sure you guys have seen this. The way the sun is there for the sidelines, how it makes the away team more tired because of the way the stadium's like positioned. I think that's really interesting. And that's kind of like an underrated home field advantage because it just does not matter who they play. When they play anybody on the road, they are just horrible on defense. And I mean, let's be honest. It's not like the Chargers have really impressed us throughout this season.
No,
It wasn't like this was a game the Chargers have like been coming into and looking fantastic. This was the game that finally they showed us the team that they can be. But I think a lot of this has been waiting. And I don't know. I was really disappointed with the Miami defense.
well, I was going to chime in real quick. I'll let Maddie have the floor right after, but I was going to address the 2 points that you just made. I think the first one being about the home field, I also believe that that is the case. I feel like at home, you wouldn't think the Dolphins would have a huge home field advantage because listen, you can say what you want about the sun. And I think that's a huge factor, especially when it's 85, 90 degrees with the humidity and it's sunny. I mean, that can obviously tire a team
That
out.
Florida humidity is different.
Especially when the stadium is built and designed in a way where the visiting team sideline is just going to get burnt by the sun and they basically are just fighting for their lives or they're just drinking so much water or whatever it is, Gatorade, but they don't have a big home crowd because a lot of the visiting teams fans will travel down to Miami. I feel like it's one of those places where I don't know if the visiting team's playing it, you'll see a lot of visiting teams jerseys.
Cities like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Miami.
Right.
Travel.
And ironically, since they played in LA last night, I'm not sure how many Dolphins fans are in the crowd just because
we know there weren't any Chargers fans. That's
that's true. But I feel like your second point, which I was going to address, the Chargers, I feel like they're a good team on paper. It's just every week it's like, oh, they look good. They could be a playoff contender. The next week they lose to some mediocre team, and you're like, oh, here we go again. They're back to where we thought they were. The Chargers just charging all over again. I feel like every week it's just flip flopped.
And listen, the Chargers are 7-6, but if the Patriots win tonight and they're 7-6, they're ahead of them. So the Chargers have a lot of work left to do. This is a nice win for them, and it's a step forward in the right direction. But they're going to have some tough games. They're still going to be playing against the Raiders, who have still technically are in the hunt, as much as it doesn't appear that way. And they're also still going to have to play a division game against the Broncos, which is the last week.
Yeah, they got to go to Denver.
I was going to say,
and they don't play well in Denver the last few
they
years.
don't.
So you can say we won about the Broncos, but
So those
yeah.
I'm sorry, they actually don't play the Raiders. They played the Raiders a couple weeks ago. I'm sorry. I meant the Colts. My bad.
that won't be easy either. That's a primetime game.
So that's a Monday night game, which realistically they should win. But the game they play next week is the Titans. That's the game that they need.
It's a huge game.
So really, I mean, that's going to be a tough one for them, the Titans, because that's a game instantly. You see the Chargers win that, and then they go and lose it right back the next week. So good step in the right direction for the Chargers. But any last points you want to make, Maddie?
No, I was just gonna bring up the Titans as well. How they're playing next week, and they're both 7-6. So important game that the Chargers should try to win, at least boost their,
Yeah,
especially if currently the Jets are also 7-6, and we could be 7-6 after tonight, like you said. So
yeah, there's a lot going on there. And let's talk about tonight because we got the Patriots and the Cardinals. Maddie, you're the Patriots fan here, so give us your expectations. What are you looking forward to tonight?
Well, I'm hoping that Mac Jones is able to throw the ball down the field, which we've had some issues in the throwing game. I feel like Matt Patricia has not been having Mac Jones throw it. Yet when Mac Jones does throw it, it tends to go well. Like everything goes well when he throws the ball. I think last week he just threw it. He completed, and again, this shows how little he throws it. He completed like 6 of 7 passes, but it was for like 90 something yards. So when he throws the ball, it goes well. It's just Matt Patricia doesn't have to throw it. The Cardinals have a pretty bad passing defense. So
they're horrible. They are horrible.
I'm hoping we take advantage of that tonight. Throw the ball on the field, get some touchdowns that way. Especially because Stevenson, although he's technically a running back, he can, receive and then run, and he likes to run with defenders literally on his back. So hopefully that can happen. One thing I'll say about the Cardinals, though, is that Murray's playing, which I'm pretty sure he is. We have a hard time defending the run sometimes, so that could be an issue.
And they also have James Conner, who's been pretty productive for them since coming back from injury, and he's not a bad running back. But I think the biggest problem for the Patriots, especially on their defense, is their linebackers aren't that athletic, and they struggle with running quarterbacks specifically. Yeah. Like Josh Allen, I feel like always makes their lives just so difficult because he's so tough to, contain.
Yeah, pretty much. They always get the over rushing. That's what they're.
Yeah. All right. So, Jeffrey, what would you like to add about this Patriots Cardinals conversation?
This is an interesting matchup because these are two teams that I think have kind of underachieved this season. I think more so on the Cardinals side. I think the Patriots have not underachieved as much just because I feel like they weren't supposed to do much in the sense that they could be another 10-win team and make the playoffs, but they're still at 6-6. I mean, they're still on track to potentially be a wild card team. But I think the key tonight, like Maddie brought up, to get the passing game going, let's see if their O-line's healthy because Isaiah Wynn is out and Trent Brown is questionable. So if they're down 2 starters, that's troublesome.
Well, that was the problem against Buffalo. Their O-line was not great at all.
Right. And you don't want to get the Cardinals pass rusher some confidence where they can get to Mac Jones and just have a day. But I think the other key too is Damien Harris is doubtful. So I don't know if he's going to play. And Jacoby Myers, I think if you're going to get the passing game going, I think is out. Damien Harris is doubtful. So I don't know who's going to be that guy to step up. Well, I could ask Maddie that actually. Maddie, who do you think is going to be that one receiver that could really step up? Because you have some tight ends that could do it, but what about wide receivers?
Step up. He hasn't done literally anything this season except for the past 2 weeks, but hopefully that's a step in the right direction. Also, I do not know how to pronounce his name, but it's Aguilar, I think.
Yes.
Mac Jones did throw to him a few times last week when he only threw those 7 passes. So hopefully we get a few touchdowns that way. Another thing about our defense is I can only just hope that Judon gets a sack or 2, which will help us with the rushing. That's Murray.
Yeah, the Cardinals O-line is not great. So you're going to have an advantage there because if you can at least get to Kyler with sacks and you can make things happen back there, you can probably force them into some turnovers too. And you do have relatively good DBs. That is something that I would say is the strength of your team. Not as much as the D-line, but the DBs are okay. And I think if you can get Kyler under pressure, you'll be able to get him to possibly have some turnovers, which he's susceptible to. That's probably your best chance to win.
Yeah, I think so.
But really, I think the biggest challenge for the Patriots is going to be stopping DeAndre Hopkins because they just did not do a good job against Stephon Diggs at all when they played against him. I felt like they didn't do a good job, especially when they played him not that long ago. And it just makes me concerned. It's like, can anybody on the Patriots really step up and defend DeAndre Hopkins? I don't know. That's a question that has to be answered. One more time. What did you say, Maddie?
I said I hope someone can, but I'm not really sure if that's going to happen. I feel like that's why I think our strong suit is we need to sack Murray as many times as we can.
Yeah. So the offense that you guys need is it needs to be like that Vikings offense where you were throwing the ball to the running backs, you were getting Ramondre Stevenson in space because honestly, I think he's your best offensive player. He seems to do by far the most at anybody when he has the ball in his hands. So I would try and get him in space. Look for maybe not necessarily some screens, but maybe just him just in any possible way, getting him the ball. I think that would be your best chance of getting a win. I would really try and pound the rock against the Cardinals too, because we saw the 49ers do a good job of that. Yeah. So anything else you want to add, Jeffrey?
Do you want to pick?
Oh yeah, give us a pick. Yeah.
I think this is gonna be really entertaining back and forth, just because I feel like these teams are not too far off from one another. But I don't know. I'm going with the Pats. I think they win 24-21. I think it's to be really close down the stretch.
I like the Pats too. I'll take Pats 21, Patriot or Cardinals 17. Maddie, what do you think?
Yeah, I was about to say the same. I was going to say Pats 21, Cardinals, 14 or 17.
All right, there we go. Looks like everybody here is on the Patriots tonight, and should be a good game. Honestly, I'm pretty excited for it. Even though the Cardinals are a dumpster fire, I always enjoy making fun of Cliff Kingsbury. He's always very interesting guy to make fun of. He should be probably fired after this week.
I agree. And the other thing I was going to bring up, we talked about home field advantages and visiting teams, fans visiting other team stadiums, but I wonder how many Patriots fans are going to be in the crowd tonight, because Arizona, I think, is one of those places where I don't know, a lot of fans could show up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's yes and no. I mean, that's definitely
It's kind of a
true.
split
It's just
one.
that it's a long trip from New England to Arizona.
That's true. There could not be on more opposite sides of the country.
Yeah, yeah. So
We'll see.
We'll see that too. Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully, Monday Night Football when the Cardinals are on, they bring back that mariachi band from a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, Maddie, thank you as always for coming on and being a part of the show today.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you, Maddie. Always a pleasure. Have a good one. All right. Well, that's unfortunately going to wrap it up for our time here on After the Whistle. Thank you, as always, for listening. We'll see if we have another show this week, but we will let you know if we do, because the holiday break is approaching. So hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and we will let you know if we have another show. So stay tuned.